In this video, what I'm going to share is why we're on tour and what exactly we're doing. Here in just a few days, I'm going to be launching my fourth book, which is an anthology where uh, contributed a chapter in Author's Playbook. And what's exciting about this is there's some things that I've shared in this book that to me are very kind of the cornerstone of what I've been able to offer to my group, which is Public Speak and Prosper. And that is simply discovering and developing your voice. And in this chapter, I specify what's so important about your voice and how when you create content, it's very important that it's original, it's inspirational, it's creative, and it's something that becomes a part of you. And so it's also exciting in the fact that there's other authors that are contributing to this book. Every one that we've done so far has been a number one international bestseller. So it's kind of like when you get on a roll, it's good to stay on that roll. And also, this past week, I actually submitted another chapter for a very challenging project, and where it's called the Course Creators Playbook. Now, what was challenging about this is the fact that I've never created a course. And so 1 week before this chapter was due, I decided to create a course. And I went through the whole process of what I actually offer to as far as instruction, but I was using things that are in my group of Public Speak and Prosper of what people wanted to learn is we have the three pillars of becoming a speaker, becoming a writer, becoming a prosperous entrepreneur. And I found that what my group members, there's about 170 members in that group, what they wanted to know is how could become a best-selling author and also kind of a go-to or a keynote speaker. And so with this chapter that I just wrote, I found that it was very challenging in the fact that I've never published a course. So what I did is I compiled the 36 different tips that I have as far as becoming, a good course creator and also a prosperous, entrepreneur and speaker and writer. And then I hired a guy on Fiverr to actually create a slide deck for that. It came back, and I was so impressed with what this young guy from India, I think it was, came up with, and it was just so much that I put it on the side. I'm not going to offer it until we get back from tour, but it gave me the basis for this chapter of what I found to be the most important aspect of creating a course. And in this chapter, what I talk about is the cornerstone of how your voice is so important in just creating a course. And so, again, just like the author's playbook, it carries over to the course creator's playbook. In that, as an author and a speaker, it's very important that you find and discover and develop your own voice. And so, I found it very challenging in the respect that I didn't have any actual stories of how it created a course and how it did, but it was all in what has happened in the last several weeks. And so I actually used one of my writers, editors that helps me to develop content, and I gave a whole bunch of information, and she came back with 600 words of a 2,000 word submission. And so I was thinking, what can I do? And I had like 2 days to write this whole chapter. And so I started to develop a story that I've used with some coaching clients that have been in the process. They were developing a course and struggled with the fact that you know they weren't sure if the content they were developing was something that people would really like, or they weren't sure of how it would come across. And so when you're kind of developing in the dark, you don't really have an awareness or feedback from the people, then it's very hard to do that. And so I told a story about that I used to use with my coaching clients, where I talked about somebody that wanted to break into the fashion industry in Manhattan. and they were a young man, had all these designs, had, lots of talent, but they didn't have any connections. They didn't have the resources necessary. They didn't really have the means to be able to carry it full through. And so this young man finds this older gentleman who had been in the fashion industry his entire life, and he was thumbing through a kind of a past edition of a fashion magazine. And I personally used to work for the parent company of Esquire magazine. And so we used to take tours down to Two Park Avenue in lower Manhattan, very just affluent district. And just it's just a kind of like it was the world's headquarter for fashion and for style and for advertising. And it just brought about back a lot of memories. But in this conversation this young man had with the older gentleman, he told him about a story about a young man that was trying to do a similar thing that this man was doing, and how, as far as breaking into the fashion industry, there was a method that he did that made all the difference. So I'm not going to tell you the story. You can actually order the book, and when we launch here in a few days, um, for the author's playbook, you'll be able to pick up the advanced copy for 99 cents an ebook. And I'll announce the date. Last book that we did, we were on tour, and that was for Author Code. And that book actually went number one internationally in all three categories the day before the release. And that's just simply because we sent out invitations for people to go ahead and download the book or do an advanced copy. And it was just a really kind of an exciting time. So we're in Denver, Colorado, and it's been fun to see some family here and to just relax and enjoy the mountain air. And it's just a very temperate climate here. It's in the 70s today. Probably will get up to the 80s. And we're going out for lunch. Probably we'll get some nice Denver local food. Who knows what we'll get, and get the dog for grooming. But other than that, I kind of wanted to share what's been going on in our lives. And we traveled for 3 days to get from Minnesota to Denver here. We're going on to Wyoming and Idaho, and we'll spend like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks there, and then up to Glacier National Park, maybe hit some nice of our favorite hot spots, and then back through the Dakotas and back home to Minnesota around the third week in June. So it's an exciting time. We appreciate you following us, and any comments or questions you have, you can put lower in the chat. And sure appreciate your just your support. So have a good rest of the day, and we will talk to you later.